Okay, hi you beautiful New Zealanders. Today we're going to look at a video that I made about two people, Chris Luxon and Tama Potaka. Also going to have a look at a book that's been written that's come out in New Zealand by Dr. John Robinson, who is New Zealand's leading historian and researcher. In his latest book, Who Broke the Treaty, he describes Potaka, that's the guy on the right hand side of those two photos, as a fox in the hen house. Now, those are pretty strong words, so we want to find out why that's so. So I'm going to try and shed some light on that comment in this video I'm about to show you. I recommend you get John's book from Trust Publishing. It's a great read, and every New Zealander should be reading it. John details everywhere Maori have breached the treaty since 1840. He just says wherever Maori have breached the treaty, he discusses that. So today I'm going to commentate on two videos. Like I said, the first is on a debate inside the debating chamber in Parliament. And the second is a Jack Tame interview with Prime Minister Chris Luxon, and that's near the end. So I hope you really learn from these and really enjoy. There's a little bit of work to do this time. This is something I want you to learn. You'll see about that. And so that we can really get the New Zealand public schooled up about the treaty, about Maori activism, and we can get on top of this. But you need to help, and you need to help me, because we need to do it together. We need to be a great army, a great team of people who are working together to stop what's going on in our country. So enjoy today's video, and I'll see you at the end. Okay, we're not going to get very far understanding the mind of activists and understanding the footage that I'm about to show you about the politicians in Parliament unless we understand the whole way activists think. So particularly about sovereignty. So this is a little bit of a sort of a school session really, or a learning clinic for the first little bit of this video. There are two aspects of sovereignty. The first, there is governmental sovereignty. This is when someone or a group of people are given the right to govern a country, i.e. set up rule, a justice system, taxes, build schools, hospitals, government buildings, roads, etc. Second, there is private land sovereignty. This is the sovereignty a private individual possesses when they own a piece of land. They are the sovereign rulers of that land, as it were. The boss, if you like. They decide what goes and what doesn't go on their land as long as they obey the rules and regulations of their local council, which were or are established by the governmental sovereignty. So far, so good. When Maori ceded sovereignty in Article 1, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, they ceded government sovereignty. They gave the British the right to establish a government in New Zealand. Maori chiefs were also granted private land sovereignty. That is to say, the chiefs could still be chiefs over their land and could keep practicing being chiefs, their culture, as long as they were staying within the bounds of British law. That is, no more human sacrifice, no more murder, no more war, no more cannibalism, infanticide, etc. Because all those things are illegal under British law. The British, now the government, started to establish rules and regulations for private land sovereignty too. For example, today we have private land owners have to pay rates. So, here we go. In the first article of the treaty, Maori ceded governmental sovereignty to the British. This is the first article. The chiefs of the Confederation of United Tribes and the other chiefs who have not joined the Confederation cede to the Queen of England forever the entire sovereignty of their country. It's clear, isn't it? Cede means to give up or give somebody control. Sovereignty means government or complete power to govern. So there's no wriggle room in that article. The chiefs signed off on that, and so it's very clear that Maori chiefs, 540 of them, ceded sovereignty. Here is the first paragraph of the second article of the treaty. It says, the Queen of England confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and the tribes and to all the people of New Zealand the possession of their lands, dwellings, and all their property. Now, this is we're getting right into the epicenter of the activist mind here. The word possession is the key word in this sentence. For the British, it meant just that, possession or ownership. The word possession was translated into the words Tino Rangatiratanga by missionary Henry Williams on the night of the 4th of February 1840. Now, if you want to know the whole reason why Henry chose this Maori phrase, tino rangatiratanga, then just click on the link and in the description of this video. Because you need to know the whole reason. It's very, very important. So the question now is, why did the British insert this article into the treaty? Well, Maori chiefs were fearful or worried that the British were going to just take Maori land. That's what they were worried about. They were really frightened about that. So the British were allaying the fear of the chiefs. That is all. Nothing. It's very simple, this treaty. It's extremely simple. Okay, it's not complicated, but it's been made very complicated by activists over the last 50 years. So the British were saying to the chiefs something like this: we realize you're worried about your land, so we guarantee to protect your ownership of your land, the land you own as at the 6th of February 1840. No one will take it from you. If you sell your land, all of it or just some of it, then you will no longer be the owner of that sold land. You will have forfeited your private land sovereignty. It's exactly the same today. In 1840, Henry Williams and his son Edward spent the night at Te Tii Marae at Waitangi on the 4th of February, explaining these sovereignty concepts to the chiefs. Henry Williams was clear that Maori understood them. Maori had been selling land for several years before 1840, so they knew all about the concept of buying and selling land. Think about it. It's the same today in 2024 in New Zealand. If a person sells a house that is sitting on some land, when the new owner moves in, private land sovereignty, as it were, of the house and land is transferred from the old owner to the new owner. You just have somebody take over your land. We don't talk in these terms today, of course, but that's what's happening. We talk about ownership, the transfer of ownership of a house, which is exactly what the chiefs and the British in 1840 understood tino rangatiratanga to mean. Between 1975 and today, this is where we're getting to. Maori activists have subtly twisted the meaning of the word possession. They say it means either absolute sovereignty or authority or unqualified exercise of chieftainship. They use these three interchangeably. So what do these words, phrases mean? Well, activists say that they mean that the British guaranteed Maori governmental sovereignty over all their land forever, irrespective of whether they sold it or not. That is to say, fraudulently, that the treaty guaranteed the chiefs private land sovereignty and governmental sovereignty forever. I know. It makes no sense, and it's an absolutely absurd idea. How can someone sell land and still own it after it's sold? Especially if you've given money over. I mean, imagine it, handing over a whole lot of money, saying, thank you, we've purchased this land, and then the person who's just sold it comes and says, no, I still own it, and I've spent the money. No. But this is what they say. In other words, activists say that Maori did not cede governmental sovereignty at Waitangi on the 6th of February 1840. Even with the land they sold, activists today often say that Maori in 1840, quote, didn't realise that if they sold land that they'd lose ownership of it forever. This is nonsense. They knew very well. They were flat out selling land and buying land. This is how Maori activists today reason that they own all of New Zealand. They say they never ceded sovereignty. The activist understanding of tino rangatiratanga is therefore a complete crock. One can't cede sovereignty in Article 1 and have it given back in Article 2. It's a complete contradiction in the same treaty. One can't be sovereign over a country that's having complete control and have a rival sovereignty, either Maori chiefs, governing another part of the country in a parallel government arrangement. Well, that's silly. Sovereignty means complete control, not partial control, not sharing control. There cannot be two cooks in the kitchen. The British were not that stupid to have set up an arrangement like this. And we are stupid if we think they are that stupid. so don't be stupid. David Lange, ex-Prime Minister, he said this: did Queen Victoria for a moment think of forming a partnership with a number of signatures, a number of thumbprints and 500 people? Queen Victoria was not that sort of person. We can have a democratic form of government or we can have indigenous sovereignty. They can't coexist and we can't have them both. Now that's perfect. So I want you, please, if you can, just to, when are the activists going to learn this? Please can you download this document? It's in the description of the video. And try and just remember what Tino Rangatiratanga means for activists and what it meant to the British and to Maori chiefs in 1840. They're completely different. Okay. So what you're about to see here is Willie Jackson is going to ask Tama Potaka, who's the national minister. Potaka is the most dangerous guy in Parliament because he's a Maori activist. But Willie Jackson is, and a whole lot of other Maori MPs, they gang up on people because all the Maoris inside Parliament network together. They're like hyenas. They're in a pack. And Willie Jackson is leading the charge. And let's see what he does here. It's very, very, very interesting what he comes up with.
With respect, I wanted to get a position from the minister in terms of what basically sums up the government's Maori and treaty policy, and that's why I'm giving the examples of David Seymour, the Honourable Winston Peters, and the last person I wanted to give as an example was the Prime Minister, whose view on Maori policy and treaty policy is that Maori can only protest on the weekend when it's convenient to him. So I would like to know from the Minister what basically sums up the government Maori and treaty policy.
Well, all right, what he's trying to do here is he is trying to find out what the Minister believes, that's Potaka, believes about Tino Rangatiratanga. Did Maoris cede sovereignty or not? That is what they're getting at. That is what they're after. They want that information because they want to find that out, and if Potaka doesn't believe that, he's going to get ganged up on like you would not believe by the other ministers, the other Maoris inside Parliament. So they want to know where he stands, and they're after him. This is the hyenas on the loose.
The problem is, I'm sure he can't answer that in a concise fashion that question time would allow, but I will ask him to perhaps say, make a brief statement.
All right, so Jerry Brownlee just shows that he's completely not with it. He doesn't understand what the Maoris are trying to do. He doesn't understand Tino Rangatiratanga. Understandings you and I have of sovereignty, the two different aspects of it, the governmental sovereignty and the private land sovereignty. And he doesn't understand the word Tino Rangatiratanga, the word possession in Article 2, and how Maori have twisted that. And so they're gunning for Potaka, but Jerry Brownlee is sitting there, really not knowing what's going on, doesn't know these issues, and is all at sea.
Mr. Speaker, Talofa Lava, I'm very proud to be part of a party that's...
So he says Talofa Lava to start with. He didn't say kia or anything else. He's using Samoan language because it's Samoan Language Week. So this is Mr. Potaka, and this is the most dangerous guy in Parliament because he is a full-on activist.
The historic treaty settlements process over 30 years ago, and I stand with my esteemed colleague, Honourable Paul Goldsmith, who has continued in the vein of Christopher Finlayson and Doug Graham and Mihiana Kia Tata.
All right. So he doesn't say what the government's policy is at all. He doesn't answer the question. He just said he's in a line with other National Party MPs, Doug Graham and Chris Finlayson, who were absolute charlatans. Chris Finlayson particularly, he was like the devil incarnate, working against the whole country to just shovel assets and cash Maori way like there was no tomorrow. That's Chris Finlayson. And he says he's very proud to be part of that. And he's working with Paul Goldsmith, who is the Minister of Treaty Settlements inside the National Party. And he doesn't answer the question at all. Not at all. He does not answer the question at all, Willie Jackson's question.
Speaker, point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, so the question's very clear. I can't help it, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking for the government policy and the government and his view in terms of Winston Peters, David Seymour and the Prime Minister, and he's waffling on about Doug Graham.
No. Well,
so he's actually right about that. I'll give it to Willie Jackson. He did not answer the question. Potaka did not answer the question. What is the government's policy with respect to Maori?
Well, I guess he's just throwing out a bunch of names like you have. So I just think the question, with all due respect, is not that clear. I'll give the member one more.
The question is not that clear. Yes, Jerry, it's very, very clear, but you're not switched on to what is going on in this country. This is why politicians have been the problem since 1840, because they're not aware of the issues that are facing this country. They don't know the mind of activists, and they don't know how they work. And Jerry is completely out of it.
A question. I'll let him go.
Mr. Speaker, in terms of the minute.
Willie Jackson makes a mistake here because he changes tack. He goes on to something else, which is silly. He should have drilled Potaka to get the answer to the question he asked, which is, what is the policy of the National Party towards Maori? And he's really getting at tino rangatiratanga and the issue of sovereignty.
So, I ask the next question, is the Minister planning to attend the Hui Taumata this Friday in Hastings? And if so, what will he be saying to all those concerned about his government's Maori policies?
Talofa lava, Mr. Speaker. As we all know, tomorrow is the budget, and there are various responsibilities that go with being a minister of this government attending to budget matters. I look forward to hearing and potentially seeing the outcomes of the hui that will be convened at Omahu, the home of various hapu of mine, Ngāti Mahuika, Ngāti Honomokai, and Ngāti Paki. Kia ora tātou.
Okay, he doesn't answer the question at all. He just waffles on. And this is what he does. By the way, there's Shane Jones sitting there, and there's Winston Peters there saying nothing. So this is extremely interesting to see the dynamics of Parliament here and what goes on.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Nicola Willis.
Do Māori stand to gain from a budget that delivers responsible economic management?
All she's asking is, she just chips in and again shows that she is completely out of touch with what these Maori are really getting at, what Willie Jackson's really getting at. She's not aware. I hate to say it, but she's treaty ignorant, and she's ignorant of the dynamics of activism, Maori activism in this country. So there's two politicians, Jerry Brownlee and Nicola Willis, Minister of Finance. So Potaka gets up again.
Mr. Speaker, I look forward to hearing the budget tomorrow, and I wanted to acknowledge our Manu Putia, Minister Nicola Willis, for her absolutely professional and diligent approach to ensuring that Māori and all New Zealanders benefit from this budget. Supplementary.
All right, so now we're just getting sidetracked onto the budget and complimenting each other on the budget, and it's got nothing to do. Potaka's guiding this nicely off the topic, which is, did Maori cede sovereignty or not? It's a huge question. It is the question.
Supplementary.
So up to his feet comes Waititi. Now this is where it gets interesting.
We'll just wait for a bit of quiet.
Because Waititi, what he does is he actually zeroes in. He's fully aware of what's going on, and he zeroes in on the question.
Does the minister believe that te tiriti is fundamental to our nation?
Okay, he's asking the first question, is the treaty fundamental to our nation? So he's really zeroing in on, he's trying to go in for the kill.
Talofa lava, Mr. Speaker. Yes, and I believe that Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, is the basis for the kōtaitanga that I have subscribed to for the course of my life.
All right, all he says is that the Treaty of Waitangi has been my whole life. He is still not saying the foundational document of this country or not. He just says it's the document that's the foundation of his own life. So again, he's not answering the question.
Supplementary. Does he believe, and will he confidently put on record, that all the rangatira on behalf of their respective hapu who signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Māori text, ceded sovereignty to the British Crown? Or did Māori maintain rangatiratanga?
There you go, that's it. Did Maori cede sovereignty to the British Crown, or did they retain rangatiratanga? Now, by rangatiratanga, he means the fraudulent interpretation, which is absolute sovereignty or unqualified exercise of chieftainship over New Zealand. That's what he's asking. He's asking, did Maori cede sovereignty or not, Potaka?
Talofa lava, Mr. Speaker. As we know, the Treaty of Waitangi, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, is a sacred covenant, a kawanata tapu, that was signed between various rangatira, iwi and hapu and representatives of the Crown.
He doesn't answer the question again. He wants to avoid it. He fully knows what's going on, because if he lets it out, he's got to make a decision. Does he believe that Maori ceded sovereignty in 1840 through the treaty or not? And if he lets it out that he's an activist, all hell would break loose in the National Party. So he's got to keep it quiet. He believes that Maori did not cede sovereignty. So how do we know what Potaka really thinks? Well, you have to go to his thesis to find that out. So here are some direct quotes from his thesis, which I have put in the description to this video. He says central government and local government need to consider sharing power. No, they don't, Tama. Why? Well, the treaty is not a partnership. There are 160 cultures living in New Zealand, and this is a democracy. Under the law, we are all to be treated equally. Why are Maori singled out by Potaka? Tama, why are you singling them out? We're all supposed to be treated equally. He says, the next quote from his thesis is, anything less than an increase in power for Maori would signal yet another failure in respecting the treaty. Oh my goodness. No, Tama. There is absolutely nothing in the treaty about Maori being given special privilege or power. This is apartheid. It's a racist attitude. Number 3, it is submitted that action means a treaty-driven legislative agenda focused on requiring local government authorities to comply with the treaty in all activities. Where are you getting this from, Tama? The only compliance that is required by local government is to obey the laws and statutes generated by Parliament. In a democracy, none of these laws are to give anyone privilege based on race. This is what David Seymour is on about, and he's completely right. Currently, our laws and statutes are riddled with race-based legislation and laws. All these need to be expunged from all our legislation. The coalition government said they were going to do this, but nothing's actually happened. We are not apartheid South Africa. We don't want apartheid in our country in New Zealand. This is why we must support David Seymour's bill. Number 4, the fourth statement or fourth quote from Tama's thesis, he says, more important to treaty jurisprudence, such as the law, is the development of relations between Maori and local government and greater control and power over resources to Maori. Again, he is consistently wanting greater power and greater resources going to Maori. Absolutely no is my answer. All resources in our country are to be shared between all people of all the 160 cultures. We have got to say no to apartheid, no to racism, say no to separatism. Tama, you're spreading it. You're making it worse. Say no to wrongly viewing the treaty as a partnership. So all my answers are in light blue. My response to Tama's statements and all the 4 statements that I've picked out of his thesis, there they are, they're all in black. So it's pretty clear what this guy believes. He believes rangatiratanga, and he believes the activist interpretation of that word.
That question was really clear.
It was really clear. Now look at Debbie Narawapaka down on his right-hand side. Just watch her.
That question was really clear. I was asking whether he believed that all rangatira on behalf of their respective hapu who signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi ceded sovereignty to the British Crown, or did they maintain rangatiratanga?
Well,
there it is. It's really clear. Now here we go. Jerry Brownlee's going to chip in again and take them off track. I actually admire Waititi for sticking to the subject. But watch what happens.
give him a chance to say something again, but I would point out that he made it clear what he believes, which was the first part of the question.
No, Jerry, you're not aware of what he's saying. You're not aware of what's going on here, Jerry. Oh my goodness, I feel so upset about this because these guys were really, Waititi was really moving in for the kill.
Talofalama, Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely clear that Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, provided that the Crown would actively protect the rangatiratanga of our people.
All right, he gives a very cunning answer here, that the Crown would protect the rangatiratanga of our people. Now, we don't know whether he means the British understanding, the right understanding, which is just simply ownership, would protect the ownership of the land of the people, of the Maori people, or whether he means the activists' understanding of rangatiratanga, which is that Maori never ceded sovereignty and they have absolute sovereignty over New Zealand today. We still don't know what Potaka means. He's being very tricky.
Answer it, Tama.
Point of order.
Somebody shouts out, did you hear that? Answer it, Tama. They want him to answer it. These are the hyenas circling.
You're the minister.
Point of order, Raurie Waitangi.
She says, this is Debbie now Rebecca. She says, answer it, Tama. They are after him. Now, you can watch this whole video without me interrupting it. I'll put it in the description of this video so you can watch it yourself without any interruptions, and then you won't have my commentary interrupting. But seriously, this is interesting.
Kenny, I'm perplexed by that answer, Mr. Speaker, because it's not an answer.
So it wasn't, she shouts out, Debbie Narapaka shouts out, it wasn't an answer. He says it wasn't an answer, but he's about to blow it here because he doesn't repeat the exact question again. He goes on to something silly.
Wait a minute. Hold on. It's not an answer.
Start again.
He's made up.
Start again.
Sorry. Point of
Points
order, Mr. Speaker.
are heard in silence.
I'm perplexed by that answer because it's actually not an answer. He's made up text that doesn't even exist in Te Tiriti o Waitangi, or even its principles or articles.
That's right.
So I wanted to...
He's wrong about that because rangatiratanga is actually in the articles of the treaty. We've just been through that. Tēnā rangatiratanga is what Henry Williams used to translate the word possession into the English word possession into the treaty in Maori. So he's wrong about that, and he shouldn't have tried to be a smart aleck.
clarify that for the record, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you for doing that in your opinion, but he did answer the question by...
So he's kind of putting, Jerry's kind of putting Waititi down by saying, oh, this is just your opinion. But really, Jerry is showing that he is not in touch with what is going on here, the dynamics of the activists.
The opening words, I believe, and that is what the intention of your question was, and the words of your question were right at the start. And shake your head, but in the end, words matter. We now have another supplementary.
Does he believe rangatiratanga can be achieved whilst being subjugated and simulated in this Westminster system?
All right, this is a really interesting question because he says, does rangatiratanga, that is absolute sovereignty. So he's speaking, you just find out the mind of Waititi there. He's speaking like an activist. He's got the mind of an activist, and he's got the activist interpretation of rangatiratanga, which is that Maori have absolute sovereignty. So he's really saying, can Maori exercise absolute sovereignty while they have the British overlords over them, that is Parliament, while they're in a Westminster system, while they're soaking in democracy?
Talofa lava, Mr. Speaker. We live in an ever-evolving country.
Okay, very, very bad thing to say. He starts off by saying we live in an ever-evolving country. On one level, that's true because there's change going on in this country. I mean, new roads, new people, new institutions, new technology, and so on. But what he really means is that the treaty is a living document. This is what the activists often say, the treaty is a living document. What does that mean? It shifts and changes like the wind. And that means you can change what it means. You can interpret what it means. You can change the meaning to suit whatever you're doing.
Aotearoa New Zealand, and I believe that Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, is a sacred covenant that's been signed by representatives of iwi and hapu and the Crown.
That still does not answer the question. He's avoiding the question. He just keeps on saying it's a sacred covenant between the chiefs and the Crown. Sits down.
A supplementary, the Honourable Shane Jones.
Can the Minister confirm this debate was settled by Sirapara Ngata in a seminal document reflecting his understanding a lot closer to the signatories of the Treaty of Waitangi, and the Treaty of Waitangi is an indivisible, bilingual, bicultural document incapable of being dismembered to suit the fads of a minor party of Parliament.
All right, now, Shane Jones is getting very wound up, and he thinks that he's trying to put down the Maori Party for trying to question Potaka, but I actually think that Shane didn't do quite so well there, because he should have said to the Potaka, I think you should answer the question, Potaka, did Maori cede sovereignty or not? Because it makes a huge difference to this country. And all the people, the 100,000 people who are protesting on the streets, all believe that Maori did not cede sovereignty and that Maori still have absolute sovereignty over New Zealand. Unqualified exercise of chieftainship. So I'm surprised that Shane wasn't onto this and picking up the dynamics of what's going on here. You can hear all the Maori party screaming and shouting. This has really rattled the cage.
That's enough. That is an absolute enough.
Okay, this is turning into a schoolyard. It's turning into the school teacher with all the kids disrupting the class.
The Honourable Tama Potaka.
Talofalava, Mr. Speaker. As you are aware, I am a student of the same college that Tāpira Nanata attended, Te Aute College, and I subscribe to the learnings and the teachings of Tāpirana through great subject matter writings, such as the Treaty of Waitangi and the Price of Citizenship.
All right. He says, I went to the same college as Sir Rananata. And he says, I subscribe to the teachings of Sir Rananata. No, you do not, Mr. Potaka. Because I've read Potaka's thesis, and it's only from his thesis that you get the idea, you understand what Potaka really thinks in that head of his. He is an activist. He believes that Maori did not cede sovereignty. So we found out that Tama Potaka does not believe that Maori chiefs ceded sovereignty completely and forever. He doesn't believe in Article 1 of the treaty. He believes that the treaty is a partnership. Now that is actually, he's just told a lie in Parliament because he doesn't subscribe to Sir Rananata's teachings at all, because this is what Sir Rananata actually said on this subject. He said, these are but few words. He's talking about Article 1, but they indicate a complete cession. This was the transfer by the Maori chiefs to the Queen of England forever of the government of their lands. It is the absolute authority over the Maori people which the article transmits into the hands of the Queen and Parliamentary Council. The main purport was the transferring of the authority of the Maori chiefs for making laws to their respective tribes and sub-tribes under the Treaty of Waitangi to the Queen of England forever. In other words, he's saying Maori ceded sovereignty. Sir Rananata is a believer in the original, right, correct meaning of Tino Rangatiratana, which is just ownership. Nothing more, nothing less. But Tama Potaka does not believe that. He believes that Maori did not cede sovereignty, that the treaty is a partnership, and so it's all downhill. So we have a real problem here with Tama Potaka because he's very evasive and he's very slippery. He won't answer questions. You've just seen all that. And when people are like that, it usually means they're hiding something. Well, it definitely means they're hiding something because we've just found out what he's hiding. We pieced it all together. And Luxon and Tama Potaka are left hand, right hand. So what does that tell you about Chris Luxon? What does that tell you about the National Party's view on Maorification, on the treaty, and on the direction of New Zealand, the way we're going on co-governance? It's full steam ahead under national, but all under the radar.
How familiar are you with the Treaty of Waitangi?
I'm not a treaty expert. I certainly wouldn't be as culturally fluent and literate as you are. But I really, I've been trying to get into that space even through my New Zealand journey. And
Chris should really be an expert in the treaty. Not a PhD, but I believe that all politicians should have a compulsory course on the treaty, not run by activist scholars and people who've been leaned on and paid out to keep the narrative going. But there are some scholars in this country, John Robinson, Bruce Moon, who would be brilliant at taking all politicians through courses on the treaty, because we're talking about billions of dollars being paid out. And if it's being paid out on half-ass knowledge and understanding, and you're at the mercy of the Waitangi Tribunal, then we've got no hope. We're going to be just throwing money away. Not knowing whether we're doing the right thing or not, just going on intuition and gut feeling. No, that's not good enough.
The places.
You understand the differences between the different articles?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so Article 1, sovereignty. Article 2, authority over taonga and treasures. And Article 3, really ensuring equality.
Okay, there we go. He's got Article 1 right. It's about ceding sovereignty. And basically that article trumps all the other articles, the other two articles, Article 2 and 3. Then he said, with Article 2, What's that about? He said it's about authority. Now that's the activist understanding of Tino Rangatiratanga, which we've been talking about. Absolute sovereignty or authority, they switch them out. But Chris Luxon is now carrying an activist understanding of Tino Rangatiratanga. He's also carrying the activist understanding of the word taonga, which is the word property. He calls it treasures. Chris calls it treasures. Actually, that's an activist understanding of that word. The Maori word taonga was just the word property, like chattels. So in Article 2 it says, the Queen confirms and guarantees to the chiefs and the tribes and to all the people of New Zealand the possession, the ownership of their land, dwellings and property. Maori word taonga. That's been screwed over, that last word, to mean treasures. No, Chris. The original meaning of that word is property procured by the spear. So Chris is carrying an activist understanding of Article 2. Then he says that Article 3 is about equality. He says it's about equality.
The issue, of course, is the interpretation of those articles.
Okay, so he's given us, he says, yes, I can tell you what the articles are all about, but now it's the interpretation of the articles, of course. It's exactly how activists think. Do you know what? The treaty is unbelievably simple to understand. If you got the final English draft, and then which is a mirror image of the treaty in Maori, they're absolutely the same except for the date and the insertion of the word Maori into Article 3 last minute by Hobson and Williams and Colenso on the 5th of February, just before they walked into the tent. They put that word in, the word Maori, into Article 3. It's unbelievably simple. What's happened is the activists have made it complicated, Chris. They've screwed it over and butchered it and manipulated it, played around with it, so much so that it's now nothing like what it was in 1840. And Chris Luxon has just been absolutely sucked in by that. And he now says what all the activists say, it's open to interpretation. No, Chris. It's very, very clear.
Sort of how they, the Treaty of Waitangi Te Treaty, as to how we all take different views on that.
So what does Tino Rangatiratanga mean to you?
Well, it doesn't mean co-governance to me. It means actually partnership.
Okay, so he says Tino Rangatiratanga means partnership. Well, not even the activists believe that. Not even the British and the chiefs in 1840 believe that. Nobody believes that, except National Party. Do you know that... And Chris Luxon, do you know that Judge Anthony Willy's written a brilliant paper, which is in the description of this video, how the treaty is not a partnership? David Longy said it wasn't a partnership. Winston Peters says it's not a partnership. Scholar after scholar after scholar, but Chris thinks it is. And he's just going on what he thinks, his intuition, his feelings. No scholarship. He's been tarred with the activist brush. And they've got him.
Maori having authority over their taonga and their treasure and their land.
Now he's included land. Was Maori having authority over their taonga? That's property. He's missed out treasures, and now he's included their land. Absolute authority over their land. That is the classic activist understanding of Tino Rangatiratanga. So he's very mixed up here.
So I think, we are waiting for the Waitangi Tribunal around Part 1, Part 2 and Ngāpuhi as to whether they ceded sovereignty or not.
Oh my goodness. Chris is saying he's waiting for the Waitangi Tribunal, which is an activist rat's nest. You should read the article by Michael Basset, who was on the tribunal for 10 years. And what he says, it's become an activist stronghold. Can anybody challenge the tribunal's understanding of the treaty? No. Can anybody challenge their understanding of history? No. Can anybody pull them up for activist spin and misinterpretation of the treaty? No. And Chris says we're just waiting on them to tell us whether to pay out billions to Maori in Northland based on an activist understanding of the treaty, based on the Waitangi Tribunal. I'm just astounded with what Chris has just said here. He obviously doesn't know his history at all. 240 Ngāpuhi chiefs signed the treaty. 540 around the country signed in total. 240 were Ngāpuhi chiefs of those 540. They all signed off on ceding sovereignty. They were overjoyed to do it. They wanted to become British citizens. They wanted the British to set up a parliament, and it was their desire. And yet Chris is going to overrule that, going on a dodgy as hell Waitangi Tribunal report that says Maori chiefs did not cede sovereignty. How do you do that? How do you trash them? How do you dishonour them so easily in that way? And then excuse it. Blame it on the Waitangi Tribunal. They told me to do it. Is that what you're going to do, Chris? I mean, really, this is insane. This is insanity. This is our Prime Minister.
As to how we ultimately are interpreting the treaty. And within New Zealand, and again, I'm not a treaty scholar by any stretch, I respect people who are, that's the tension that sits there.
So you don't believe in co-governance?
No, I don't think the treaty is talking about, I think the way it's being represented to New Zealanders is a separate system, and I think we fundamentally need to be very proud of our bicultural, founding and starting point, and acknowledge a special place for tangata whenua.
Okay, he says we need to acknowledge a special place for tangata whenua, and yet he said Article 3 was about equality. So if you're giving a special place to tangata whenua, then you're not into equality. You're not preaching equality. You're preaching separatism and racism and apartheid, where you give one cultural group out of 160 a special place in the country. That's not what happened at Waitangi, Chris. At Waitangi, everybody was made British citizens, everybody was levelled, and everybody was made the same. That's true equality. Now you're changing that.
Also, we have to acknowledge we are a multicultural, modern, outward-looking country as well. And so, for me, I want to see us work as one country, equal, but actually...
We're equal, but we're going to give Maori a special place. No.
To be able to...
He was just about to say to give... he was just about to say to give Maori special status and privilege in New Zealand. And you can tell that's where his mind was going, because he went straight on to Maori inequities. So really, Chris is just winging it here. He's doing his very best to hide his secret love of Maorification and furthering the Maori activist cause. And he's trying to do his best to hide that. But that's what's there, Chris. Come on. That's what's in his heart.
To be able to deal with, so we've got a lot of Māori inequities, for example. We've got to be able to sort those problems.
But there's a...
We've already talked about in my videos before many, many times about so-called Maori inequities. They are just a myth. Maori have exactly the same opportunity as everybody else in the country. There's nothing Maori cannot access that everybody else can access. They have exactly the same opportunity as everybody else. It's not like they're being shut out or cut out of anything. Nothing. In fact, they get an inordinate number of handouts and advantage over everybody else. They are actually the first-class citizens of our country, and everybody else is second-class citizens. And yet they cannot get a good result. Why not? Well, I've written a paper about that as well, and it's in the description of this video. If you go and have a look, what is the solution for Maori? Okay, I think we've seen enough. You can see the whole video. I'll put the link to the actual video, the whole video, in the description so you can see it without my commentary and look at it for yourself. So unfortunately, what you have here is an activist Prime Minister. And he may not be an activist in the sense of, out there on the streets with Waititi, but he's a closet activist. And I don't think Chris even knows that he is. I don't think he realises how tarred with the brush he's been, how under the influence of activist propaganda he has succumbed, because his understanding of the treaty is off the charts, and he's the Prime Minister. Now, you put this together, if you have Tama Potaka, who is an out-and-out activist, put him together with Chris Luxon, who's got that sort of leanings towards Maorification and co-governance, even though he says he's not into co-governance. I think he's just avoiding a hot potato, but really he is, and he definitely is. I mean, you have a look at the fast track bill that's all got iwi all through it. That's one they've just put together. The abolition of Maori wards, they can't be activated till 2028. In the 49 bullet points that they had in their first quarter, there's only 3 of them have to do with eliminating race-based legislation. And then the next 36, I think it was, only has 1. Chris is not into stopping all this. The Maori freight train. He's not into pulling out all race-based legislation. He's not interested in restoring the name of New Zealand. He's not interested in out all the Treaty of Waitangi clauses from all the legislation. He's not interested in turning all the government departments back to English names. He's not interested in restoring English. None of this. He's keeping it all going. He's keeping it all going. We thought we were going to stop all this when we put a national party in. How wrong we were. Well, I guess the public of New Zealand have been sucked in before with Ardern. We never thought it could happen again. Never. Ardern never told the country what she was going to do in 2017 and 2020. She didn't campaign on what she went on to do. She kept it quiet. She was tricky. She was secret. She was devious. She was dishonest. Now, Chris Luxon is showing remarkable similarities here, because when he campaigned, I was watching him like a hawk. And he said, oh, we're going to do the best for all New Zealanders. We're going to do the best for all New Zealanders. And he was remarkably quiet about what he was going to do to stamp out racism, apartheid, separatism, taking out race-based legislation. He didn't say anything about that. But now it's all come out. He's an activist. He's just following exactly what Ardern did to trick the New Zealand public. He's doing things today in his government that he did not campaign on. That is to say, furthering Maorification, furthering co-governance, and continuing with activist activities inside the government, albeit by stealth. I'm so sorry for New Zealand, you know. This is a beautiful country. We should have equality. No apartheid, no racism, everybody being treated equally, one person, one vote. All votes of equal value. Everybody being treated exactly the same. All the 160 cultures. It's a sad thing listening to that interview with Chris. Please share this video with everyone everywhere. The mainstream media should be reporting on the issues I am raising in these videos, but they're not. Why aren't they? Well, they're corrupt. Why are they corrupt? They are collaborating with Maori activists, there's no doubt about that. In the final analysis, the people of New Zealand, that's us, have ultimate power, not the politicians. Did you know that? The people can kick out the people in power and they can put them into power. How are we going to do that? Well, awareness is the key to change. If enough people in New Zealand become aware of the issues I am raising, we can save this beautiful country. So share these videos everywhere so that come the next election, we can vote the right people in and kick out the people who are destroying New Zealand.